Welcome back to the vault. We are moving from the gloomy basement of 1984 to the bright, neon-soaked summer of 1985. Season 3 is the blockbuster season. We got the Starcourt Mall, the Russian conspiracy, and the most terrifying version of the monster yet, the Meat Flayer. But underneath the fireworks and the fashion, this season was really about the pain of growing up and growing apart. I fed the archives into the AI to break down Billy's tragic arc and the secret meaning behind Hopper's letter. Grab a Scoops Ahoy sundae, and let's dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're strapping in. We're going to tear through all the evidence from the summer that just, well, it changed everything for Hawkins, Indiana.
We're talking about the summer of '85.
Exactly, the summer of '85.
Yeah.
And we're treating this volume 3 of the saga as a completely open case file.
And our mission today is, I think, really precise. We're looking at this massive shift that's all over the documents, how the series just pivoted from this quiet, shadow-based horror into something so much brighter, louder, and frankly, far more grotesque.
Right.
And that transformation, it didn't just up the stakes. It really cemented a global conspiracy and led to some truly devastating heartbreak.
That shift is the absolute core of it all. I mean, the main theme we see in the case files is this explosive, bright, almost blinding atmosphere of 1985 America, and it all centers on the Starcourt Mall.
It was a brilliant move, really. They used that classic 80s blockbuster feel, the neon, the consumerism, to hide this escalating, just visceral terror.
It's the ultimate distraction.
Exactly. While everyone in Hawkins is, at the Gap or getting ice cream, a secret war is being fought right under their feet.
So let's really dig into that idea, this neon horror, because the records show such a dramatic change in tone. We're so far from the cold, dark D&D basement vibe of the early years.
Oh, completely. The Upside Down's influence now feels fluorescent, it's commercialized, it's all set against that huge, gleaming Starcourt facade.
And what really stands out in the archives is how the threat itself adapted to that. It wasn't about shadows anymore.
Right. If the old Meat Flayer was this sort of ethereal, conquering shadow monster, in Season 3, it became terrifyingly tangible. It was biological.
And just physically repulsive.
Yeah.
But did that shift, that move to straight up body horror, did it make the threat feel less, sophisticated than the psychological terror we saw before?
See, that's the critical question. I would argue it made it more terrifying because you couldn't escape it. It was real. The origin of what the kids called the Meat Flayer, this giant organic mass, it all began at Brimborn's Steelworks.
And the records are specific. It didn't start in some other dimension.
No, it started with rats. Just ordinary town rats gathering and then just spontaneously exploding and melting into this nasty, gooey substance. It grounded the horror in this really disgusting biology.
So the monster wasn't summoned, it was built. It was an aggregate.
It was built, and that nastiness then spreads to the human hosts, which is where the body horror just goes into overdrive.
Right.
People like Mrs. Driscoll, Tom, Heather Holloway, they weren't just mentally controlled. The key detail here is that the possessed victims were documented as eventually dissolving, literally melting into a bloody sludge that clumped together
To form the bodies.
to form the colossal physical body of the Meat Flayer. It wasn't just dread anymore, it was a physical threat that had to be physically destroyed. It turned the monster into the ultimate consequence of all that consumerism.
Yeah.
It was literally consuming the people of Hawkins.
That connection is just so potent. But if we connect that to the bigger picture, this external threat was really only half the story, wasn't it?
Not even. I mean, the real emotional core, what the case files really reveal, was the internal conflict. The kids growing up, the group splitting apart, that loss of their childhood identity.
You could feel that friction. The files are just full of notes on the tension from all the new romantic relationships. Like Hopper, just struggling so hard with Eleven and Mike's closeness.
Oh, that was so messy and so real.
It all leads to that incredibly clumsy moment where he basically threatens Mike to back off. He just could not handle his surrogate daughter growing up.
It's such an authentic portrayal of, parenthood, or in his case, substitute parenthood, just trying to keep control over a reality that's changing way too fast. And that tension was mirrored perfectly in the deep sadness of Will Byers.
Yeah, he was the heart of the original group. And he was definitely struggling the most with all of this.
Absolutely. The records show he fought constantly with Mike and Lucas, who were, way more interested in their girlfriends than in playing Dungeons and Dragons. All Will wanted was for everything to just go back to how it used to be.
He was the one trying to hold on.
He was the only one. And that gives us that incredibly moving, symbolic moment that's documented in the archives. He gets so shaken by the distance from his friends that he flees to his childhood fortress, Castle Byers, and just wrecks the place.
He destroys it. He demolishes the physical evidence of his own youth.
And it wasn't random. The demolition coincided exactly with him feeling that familiar, that cold, miserable sensation creeping up his neck. The destruction of his childhood's safety happened at the very moment he confirmed the Mind Flayer was still alive. The internal and external horror were just perfectly in sync.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. We've got the internal horror, the body horror. But the catalyst for everything, which is heavily documented, was the introduction of the Russians.
The conspiracy was huge, and it had history. The case files show the plot was actually set up a year earlier, June 1984, after a Soviet experiment to open the gate failed. They were given a one-year deadline to succeed.
So the stakes were already global before our story even started.
Right. Which brings up the big question Joyce figures out. Why Hawkins? Why would the Soviets pick this sleepy little town in Indiana?
Seems so random.
Well, the files confirm they weren't looking for something unique. They were looking for efficiency. They chose the spot under the Starcourt Mall because the original Hawkins Gate had already been breached and then closed. That made it a weak spot, a place where it was just easier to crack reality open again.
And the way they roll this out is just brilliant. You start with Joyce's magnets falling off her fridge, this small domestic annoyance.
And it connects directly to this massive geopolitical plot. The Russians had quietly bought up property all around the power plant just so they could steal the huge amounts of energy they needed to power their machine, their key.
The super weapon.
Exactly. This thing tearing the veil between dimensions was also causing this localized magnetic disturbance all over town. It shows how deeply their conspiracy had just infiltrated everyday life.
Which of course puts our heroes on the run. Hopper and Joyce capture the scientist, Alexei, but that just puts him in the crosshairs of that absolutely terrifying Russian hitman, Grigory.
He was the unstoppable Terminator figure of the season, yeah. He showed just how lethal and committed the Soviet operation was. And then you have that tragic turning point where Grigory fatally shoots Alexei at the fairgrounds, right as he was starting to trust them.
It suddenly made the threat feel so brutally personal.
It did, and that urgency pushes us right into the final act, which means we have to talk about the emotional center of the whole season, the tragedy of Billy Hargrove.
His arc is so complex here. He goes from being this one-dimensional bully to a genuine victim, serving as the Mind Flayer's main vessel to gather all the other possessed people.
His role showed that the Mind Flayer wasn't just conquering the weak, it was exploiting the pain and the fractures that were already inside people. But his redemption, it all hinges on 11.
When she confronts him at the mall.
Right. She uses her powers to get inside his mind while the creature is literally dragging her towards its mouth.
And what she sees, what the archives document, it wasn't hatred or fear, it was his purest, happiest memory. Just a simple moment with his deceased mother on a beach.
And that flicker of humanity which she accessed through her empathy, it was the circuit breaker. It broke the connection just enough to give Billy back his agency. He chose to sacrifice himself to the Meat Flayer to save 11, Max, and everyone else.
A truly redemptive death for a character who had been defined by cruelty.
Absolutely. Which brings us to that chaotic, explosive climax in the Russian facility. Hopper and Joyce are racing to shut down the machine, and the keys are locked in a safe. The combination, planks, constant.
And securing that number gives us probably the most memorable, heartwarming, and completely ridiculous moment of the season.
You're talking about Susie.
Dustin has to contact his long-distance girlfriend, Susie, and she, bless her heart, refuses to give him the number until he sings the theme from the Never-Ending Story with her.
Over the radio. Right there in the middle of a war zone. The sheer absurdity of the world ending while they pause for a musical number is what makes that scene so iconic.
It is. But that moment of levity gets them the key. The number is secured. Hopper and Joyce get to the control room. Hopper fights Grigory, throws him into the machine.
But the victory comes at a terrible cost. Joyce realizes that shutting the device down will cause an energy burst that will incinerate anyone left in that room.
And the case files describe their final shared look, that silent, heartbreaking acceptance before she powers it down, saving Hawkins, but seemingly losing Hopper.
The emotional fallout from that just defines the whole ending. 3 months later, the Byers family is moving away, taking a now powerless 11 with them. And Joyce hands Elle the letter Hopper wrote.
The heart-to-heart. The one he never got to deliver.
And that letter, It was just Hopper pouring out all the vulnerability and love he could never say out loud. It was him being a father, telling her to keep growing, keep learning, and, keep the door open 3 inches.
But the line that really gets you, the one that captures the universal pain of watching a kid grow up, was him admitting he hates that about her, that she's getting older. He missed the simple days of Eggo sandwiches and watching movies.
And that's the true sacrifice of the season. Hopper accepting he couldn't keep her that small, safe child anymore.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here for you, the learner?
I think Stranger Things 3 was the season that balanced this existential external horror, the Meat Flayer, with an internal, crushing emotional horror. The painful, inevitable loss of childhood and the sacrifices you have to make to protect what you love.
And here's a final thought for you to contemplate. We know from the case files that while the Mind Flayer's body was destroyed, Hopper's fate was left deliberately ambiguous. And even more chilling, the Russian conspiracy was still active, holding prisoners and feeding them to an all-too-familiar creature. The gate might have been closed, but it seems the war had just moved headquarters. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the archives of the summer of '85.
That letter, keep the door open 3 inches. It still hits hard, even knowing what happens next. Season 3 really proved that this show isn't just about monsters. It's about how trauma changes us. And Billy's sacrifice is easily one of the top moments of the entire series. We are almost caught up. Next time, we tackle the massive Season 4 Vecna, the Hellfire Club, and the road to the finale. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Until next time. Keep the door open 3 inches. Thanks for opening the vault.